Lily struck the earth before she even realized she was tumbling down. Heat surged over the grassland like a scorching tide. Her gown was ripped, and the dark marks on her shoulders and knees revealed just how much she had driven herself. Each inhale rasped like coarse grit. Her belly churned with a hunger so fierce it seemed like a blade. She hadn't had a morsel in days. All she craved was water. Just one swallow. Just enough to sustain her a bit longer. When she raised her head, she spotted a fellow approaching a pump. A lanky figure with silver in his whiskers, sunlight in his gaze, and the unhurried, even stride of someone who'd spent his entire existence beneath vast heavens. Lily attempted to rise, but her frame wouldn't obey. She slumped back against the timber side of the stable. Her sight grew hazy. The fellow halted upon noticing her. He didn't hurry. He simply advanced with a gentle wariness born from seasons of encountering outsiders on the borderlands. He crouched before her and extended his flask. She clutched it with trembling fingers. The liquid touched her tongue, and she nearly wept. He inquired where she hailed from. He asked what had befallen her. His tone was deep, even, as if he aimed not to frighten her further than she already was. Lily yearned to reply, but the reply wouldn't emerge. Her throat constricted, her thoughts whirled. All she'd been fleeing from collided within her heart in a rush. She gazed at him, this unknown soul, this landowner, this gentleman who didn't shout at her or prod her or menace her, and something within her fractured. Or perhaps it simply unfurled. She couldn't quite tell in her haze. Every fellow she'd encountered in recent years had sought something in exchange: sustenance for services, refuge for yielding. Generosity always carried a cost. She'd discovered that through bitter lessons in parched hamlets brimming with hollow vows. From the tavern in Abilene, where she'd bartered her dignity for a meal, to solitary paths where welcoming tones morphed into shackles, where every gracious phrase ultimately became a toll she couldn't bear. Then she uttered the one phrase no upright man anticipates from a famished young woman sprawled in the soil. "You are going to have sex with me." Her voice splintered, but the words rang true. Stark and unfiltered. More urgent than she'd intended. The landowner stiffened. Not in fury, not in lust, but in astonishment. Profound, genuine astonishment. Lily averted her eyes. She explained she required nourishment. She said she needed a spot to rest. She confessed she had nothing remaining. To give. This was the only manner in which folks ever took notice. The man regarded her for an extended instant. Long enough for the breeze to stir the blades. Long enough for Lily to ponder if she just squandered her final hope of endurance. But what would he do now? Banish her? Exploit her despair? Or choose a path she never foresaw from a solitary dweller on a spread in the heart of isolation? Elias didn't respond immediately. He merely lingered there, eyeing this young lady who'd delivered a declaration no respectable herder ever anticipates. The breeze swept through the meadow. His mount adjusted its stance, and Lily held her breath as if bracing for a rifle crack. Then Elias did something unforeseen. He extended a hand and assisted her to sit more upright. No ire, no reproach, just a solid tranquility that arises only from a soul who's witnessed ample existence to remain stunned for long. He urged her to sip again. She did, deliberately and gently. Her hands still quivered. When she at last set down the flask, Elias spoke once more. His timbre was gravelly yet not harsh. He assured her he desired nothing from her. Not that which she dreaded, not that which she believed she must barter. He merely wished to learn if she could rise, and if she could manage the trek to the dwelling, where she might obtain proper sustenance. The instant he mentioned food, her stomach rumbled audibly enough for him to catch. He offered a faint half-grin, not mischievous, more akin to one who comprehended want from harsh seasons that had already claimed too dearly from him. Elias aided her to stand. She relied on him for support. Her limbs felt like sodden parchment. He proceeded at a measured pace so she wouldn't stumble anew. Step by step, they headed toward the homestead. The weathered timber veranda groaned beneath them. Within, the space was unadorned. A table, a hearth, a handful of racks stocked with cans and preserved provisions. It carried the scent of brew and aged timber. A gentleman's domain, unpretentious but genuine. He seated her in a stool and placed a dish of legumes and maize bread before her. She beheld it as if it were treasure. Then she devoured it so swiftly he had to prompt her to pause for air amid mouthfuls. Gradually, warmth crept back into her cheeks. She expressed her gratitude. He inclined his head and filled a mug of water for her. Then the chamber fell still, the sort of stillness that presses upon one the burden of all they've endured. Elias inquired her name. She shared it, Lily. Then she faltered. She nearly recounted the wayside inn she'd escaped, the gentlemen who spoke as if they possessed her merely because she was ravenous, but the account remained trapped in her bosom. He echoed it gently, as if committing it to memory. She regarded him and murmured that she could labor if he required aid, preparing meals, tidying, tending the steeds, anything legitimate, anything secure. Elias reclined in his seat and observed her, not as a suitor eyeing a lady, rather as one pondering if destiny had placed another in his way for a purpose yet unclear. But what would he utter next? And more crucially, what shadow from her history still pursued her, poised to alter all that followed this juncture? The clamor outdoors struck the dwelling once more, a solid thump that rattled the glass. Elias reacted before Lily could even rise. He bade her remain inside. Then he ventured into the central corridor and grasped the light. As he swung open the entry, the waning daylight poured over the grounds, and there stood Hank Crowley, the adjacent landowner every herder in the district strove to avoid. A burly figure with a flushed visage, a foul disposition, and a penchant for appearing where he wasn't invited. Hank booted the watering basin again. That was the noise they detected. Liquid sloshed over his footwear. He appeared unconcerned. He was occupied with scowling at the structure as if it had offended him deeply. Elias descended from the veranda. He queried Hank's intent. Hank sneered. He remarked he'd learned Elias had sheltered a wandering lass. He suggested perhaps she required a proper fellow to tend her. His inflection was coarse and taunting, designed to incite. Lily positioned herself behind the threshold, sufficiently concealed to observe yet unseen. Her grip tightened on the frame. Her respiration trembled anew, not from fear of Elias, but from recollections of sorts like Hank. Elevated tones had forever heralded peril, and she bore the marks to attest it. Elias descended from the veranda. He queried Hank's intent. Hank sneered. He remarked he'd learned Elias had sheltered a wandering lass. He suggested perhaps she required a proper fellow to tend her. His inflection was coarse and taunting, designed to incite. Lily positioned herself behind the threshold, sufficiently concealed to observe yet unseen. Her grip tightened on the frame. Her respiration trembled anew, not from fear of Elias, but from recollections of sorts like Hank. Elevated tones had forever heralded peril, and she bore the marks to attest it. Elias advanced one further pace, his frame aligned, the bearing of one weary of civility. He directed Hank to vacate the grounds. Plain terms, direct terms, the variety any sensible soul would heed. Hank remained rooted. Instead, he thrust out and prodded Elias in the torso. It wasn't a forceful push, but sufficient, enough to ignite a spark Elias had labored to suppress for years. Hank lashed out first, his knuckles grazing Elias along the mandible. Agony blazed bright and forced Elias to retreat a single stride. For an instant he savored the tang of blood, and a bygone recollection of youthful eras resurfaced. Tavern brawls, military exercises, epics when a gentleman either mastered holding firm or yielded. He'd forfeited too greatly in those times to ever opt for yielding once more. A spouse to illness and a frost he still envisioned in slumber. A boy to conflict that claimed youths and returned merely markers etched with their titles. Elias closed the gap, seized the collar of Hank's garment, and propelled him rearward into the earth. Hank attempted another flail, erratic and unsteady. Elias deflected his limb and felled him anew, this occasion with a solid blow to the upper arm that expelled his air. Elias loomed above, respiration even, gaze icy. He warned Hank that should he ever trespass these lands again, it would conclude not merely with a nudge or a blow. Hank grumbled something irate, clambered erect, and lurched toward his mount. When Elias pivoted back to the homestead, Lily lingered in the portal. Her eyes broadened, not in terror, but in awe. She'd never witnessed anyone defend her thus. Yet the discord Hank unleashed was merely commencing. He wasn't one to dismiss a wounded vanity easily, and his subsequent visit would bring companions. Before we proceed, take a sip of your beverage. Tell me the hour and the place from which you're tuned in. And if tales such as this appeal to you, think about subscribing. Now, are you prepared to discover Hank's subsequent scheme? Hank departed the spread bearing more soil upon his attire than dignity in his core. But a character like Hank never lingered silent after being toppled. That twilight, well after the sun sank beyond the plain, he spurred into the closest settlement with a flask clutched and resentment simmering within. In a murky tavern along the fringe of the thoroughfare, Hank encountered the sort of individual who dwelled beyond statutes because statutes spurned him regardless. His title was Cole Maddox, a lengthy outsider bearing a mark over one jowl and orbs that scarcely appeared alert, as if he wandered betwixt strife and repose. Cole perched at a board with a pack of paste-bards, a chill regard and a notoriety that prompted herders to secure their portals come nightfall. Hank deposited a pouch of currency upon the surface. Cole retrieved it, assessed its heft in his palm, and bestowed a languid grin. Hank recounted Elias, the altercation, the lesson he yearned to impart to the lass, though his phrasing prompted Cole to arc a lone brow. Hank insisted he sought merely to daunt Elias, not injure, yet his discourse implied otherwise. By the flask's depletion, Cole had agreed to depart ere daybreak. Hank exited the tavern with a smirk unfit for any honorable soul. He hadn't grasped that engaging Cole marked the initial stride toward his bleakest dawn. At the spread, Lily whisked the scullery tiles while Elias inspected the outbuilding portals. A serene enclosure, the rhythm of equines inhaling calmly in their bays. Lily emerged to proffer Elias a light. Her digits grazed his for a fleeting instant, a brief one, yet ample for each to sense a subtle alteration between them. Not affection, not quite, more akin to reliance, a form of reliance Lily hadn't known since girlhood. Elias bid her retire and vowed to vigil for a spell. She assented and returned indoors, sensing security unmatched in years. But in the shadowed stretch preceding first light, the steeds commenced to whinny and paw. Not from want, not from warmth, from alarm. Elias ventured into the enclosure, the light borne low. The flame danced over the ground. He attended. One exhalation, two exhalations, then a faint grind of soles on arid loam. Cole emerged from the stable's rear, his silhouette elongated and distorted by the radiance. His overcoat rustled sufficiently for Elias to glimpse the gleam of a pistol holstered at his flank. Elias maintained his timber level. He queried Cole's purpose. Cole stated he was compensated to complete a task, said he derived no pleasure from stirring discord, yet tolerated it readily. Ere Elias could retort, Lily thrust ajar the domicile's portal. The illumination framed her countenance, dread, yet also resolve, something fiercer. She addressed Elias by moniker for the inaugural occasion, her inflection quavering, yet resolute. That minor juncture diverted Cole's attention to her, just sufficiently to fracture his concentration, a grave lapse for him. Cole's palm descended to the weapon. Elias surged swiftly, swifter than one of his years should manage. He seized a timber bar from the barrier and arced it at Cole's limb. Precisely as the firearm emerged from its sheath, the bar struck the bandit's forearm, and the discharge veered astray into the soil by the basin, hurling grit and the acrid odor of powder. The sidearm tumbled from Cole's grasp and settled in the dust. Lily spied the piece earthbound and propelled it deeper into obscurity, beyond Cole's grasp. Lily seized another light and hurled it their way, not to assail Cole, but to afford Elias clarity for the fray. The light alighted near enough to illuminate the tableau. Elias collared Cole by the overcoat and bore him supine. He pinned him with a vigor Lily hadn't suspected in him. Cole swore and strained to escape. He succeeded in landing one potent strike to Elias's flank, forceful enough to spark stars in the elder's vision. Elias wedged a knee upon his thorax and concluded the skirmish with a final blow that evicted the bandit's wind. Lily hastened to Elias and bolstered his rise. Her palms quaked, but her gaze held firm. For the first instance in ages, she wasn't merely evading peril. She was aligned with another, confronting it squarely. Elias applied pressure to his flank and grimaced. Cole had delivered at least one solid impact. Lily noted his guarded posture and recognized he ached beyond what he'd confess. She'd observed wounded gentlemen afore, but this marked the premier occasion she fretted for one's fate. Subsequently, there'd be rappings and welts. For the present, duty called. Elias bound Cole's wrists, hauled him vertical, and informed Lily they were conveying him to the burrow. She concurred, mounted the cart, and for the first time, sensed she belonged to a cause deserving safeguard. At daybreak, the lawman confined Cole behind bars. Hank followed suit once Cole divulged his patron. As the lawman escorted him forth, Hank wrenched the manacles and bellowed that sorts like Elias and Lily seldom retained fortune indefinitely. Retribution proved straightforward that morn, crisp, unyielding, and tardily rendered. When Elias and Lily returned to the spread, the realm seemed altered. Not more secure, but richer, more resilient. At the board in the scullery, Lily bound a length of fresh linen about his flank. She queried gently why he'd battled so fiercely on her behalf. Elias replied that none had contended for him in his direst hour, and he refused to witness virtuous souls isolated any longer. Lily contemplated the dawn glow and murmured, "Perhaps existence grants an individual one fine opportunity to recommence." Elias stated such opportunity holds truth only if seized. Then he appended that for as long as she desired it, this spread was her haven, and he'd align beside her, not ahead nor trailing. Should adversity reemerge along that trail, they'd encounter it abreast. And therein lies the moral. At times, the world endeavors to shatter you. At times, individuals seek to seize from you. Yet the fortitude to reclaim your footing frequently derives from one who elects to trust in you, even when self-trust eludes. So, what do you suppose Lily gleaned from this eve? And what course would you pursue if positioned alongside Elias in that enclosure? If this narrative pleased you, offer it a nod and ponder subscribing. Recline, take a sip of your beverage, and share the spot you're heating from and the present hour.